Hi guys and welcome to the Naai Archi channel. I'm Celine. I'm here to help you becoming an architect. And today we are going to talk about a special subject which is sustainable architecture. Well, you may have a certain idea about what is sustainable architecture. You may have looked at some pictures with some futuristic architecture with some solar panels and over the ecological devices, and I will give you my opinion about this subject because you will see that in fact sustainable architecture is not as complicated as we think. So let's start now. Okay, so let's talk about sustainable architecture. So, for many people, sustainable architecture represents these images, these pictures. And if you write down sustainable architecture on Google search, you will find this kind of pictures. Well, you see a house with solar panels or some impressive perspectives with futuristic architecture and trees on facades. Also, you can find some technical schemes about ecological devices. But are these images sustainable architecture? In my opinion, no, because these images are just images, and these pictures don't tell if these buildings in fact are really sustainable. In fact, in the expression sustainable architecture there are two words. You may have noticed, it's not a surprise for you, but you see, sustainable is something that can last in a long time and that is not causing damages on the environment, and architecture is the art of building constructions. But you see, it means that sustainable architecture is not just adding ecological devices to a basic construction as we have seen on the pictures representing a house before. You see, this construction is really basic. You can find this kind of house everywhere in the world, and it's not really ecological. It doesn't respond to ecological questions. It's the same construction, the same techniques everywhere in the world, and it's not because you had some solar panels that it can become sustainable architecture. Also, sustainable architecture is not just a beautiful building with trees and plants and facade as we have seen on the previous pictures. You see, adding trees and plants on facades, I think it's a poor concept of sustainable architecture. It's not enough. So, the first point about sustainable architecture is that you have to think in a global way about designing a building. You have to answer to some questions. For example, the composition of the soil, the materials you will use, their impact on the environment, if they are efficient according to the climate. Also, what kind of construction techniques do you want to use? The culture. Are there in the region in where you want to design a building? Are there some great examples, some vernacular study cases? And also, what does the client want? These questions are not original, you will say, but you see, I think that in some buildings, architects didn't ask themselves these questions. These questions, in fact, are not especially for sustainable architecture. They are questions absolutely necessary for any kind of architecture. Then, when you have answered all these questions, you can ask yourself, what kind of ecological device can I add to the building to make it more and more efficient? And there are some devices like solar panels, rainwater tank, and according to the site, to its possibilities, you have to choose the most efficient device. Also, what we often forget when we design a building is its destruction. We design as if the building will last forever, but it's not the case. And we really have to think about the materials and the way they will live in the time, if they will resist if after the destruction of the building we can reuse these materials, and also what will be the energy consumption to destroy the building and to design and to build another one. Now we will see two examples of buildings that are really relevant to this topic of sustainable architecture. The first one is a vernacular example of architecture. You see my point by choosing this architecture, this vernacular technique construction, is to tell you that sustainable architecture is not a new thing. You see, we will talk about Kath Kuni architecture, and this architecture is located in India, in a region which is called Himachal Pradesh. And Himachal Pradesh has some interesting characteristics. For example, there are variations of topography. In this region also you have several kinds of climates, and among them there are monsoon climates which are really humid, and we have some climates which are characterized by cold winter and warm summer. So we have a lot of climate characteristics in the same region. This region is covered mainly by forests, so that the local materials are wood, mud and stone. Also, what is relevant in this region is that there are many natural disasters such as floods. There are also high risk earthquakes, cloudbursts, avalanches. So it's really hard in this region to build long-lasting constructions. So, first point about Kath Kuni architecture is that it's adaptable. You can find this kind of construction in buildings such as granary, which are really little buildings, to houses and temples. Also, Kath Kuni architecture is earthquake resistant. It's resistant thanks to the way walls are built. In fact, walls are built by a succession of different layers composed of wood and of stone. Dry stone from a side and rubble stone from the other side. And so, as the walls are not rigid, they can flex with seismic wave. Then you can see that the plinth is composed of dry stone, and it permits to counter the seismic forces. Also, Kath Kuni architecture uses local materials. As you can see on the roof, you can see stones, slate stones. Walls are composed also by stone and by wood, as we have seen before. The balconies also are composed by wood, and the plinth is composed by dry stone. Kath Kuni architecture is also adapted to the several climates in Himachal Pradesh. The reason is that the walls are really heavy, and so it permits a great insulation, whether in summer or in winter. Also, the interiors of walls are finished with mud, and mud is provides a good insulation. And you have noticed that there are slate stones on the roof, and it permits to weight down the structure against strong winds. The second point of this presentation is that sustainable architecture can be developed at all levels, and to show you this point, I will talk about architecture in a region which is located in Austria, and this region is called Vorarlberg. This region is easily industrialized, but it produced the lowest energy consumption. Also in this region, apart from the 60s, some pioneering architects have established a strong architecture based on ecology. This architecture is based on the respect, on the knowledge about regional architecture, the traditional techniques, plus a particular architectural formal language, a curiosity for new technologies, and a will to improve buildings so that they can be ecological. Qualitative architecture was possible thanks to these pioneering architects, but also thanks to the clients and the authorities. who agreed on this principle. So let's talk about an example of this new architecture is in Vorarlberg region. This is an elementary school in Doren, and the architects are Kerkrowitz and Nashbo. If you look at the picture on the left, you can already see that this architecture has a strong style. The facade is composed of concrete, and what is really beautiful, I think, is the contrast between the thin line of wood, the glass, and the concrete. This is quite simple, but the effect is great. Also, you can see on the plan that the building completes a plaza, and on the right of the building there is a church. So, why this building is sustainable? First of all, it's a compact building. So, architects have studied volumes to avoid heat loss. Also, what is interesting is that this building is made of a reduced palette of materials. As I told you, it's composed of concrete and of a local material which is silver fir. And this kind of wood is used for the walls, for the floor, and for the ceiling. And you can see the result on the picture on the right, and the result is quite interesting. Then, after architects use architectural principles to make the building sustainable, they thought about ecological devices. So, in the building you can find the mechanical ventilation, which prevents excessive energy losses, and there is a biomass-powered heating plant underneath the plaza, which permits to supply the school and some neighboring houses in heat. And to finish this presentation, what I want to say, what I repeated during the presentation, is that sustainable architecture is still architecture. And by a good architecture, we mean that we have to think about the views. You can see on these two pictures that architects have really thought about the different views from the school on the landscape. By good architecture, we mean a study about materials. In these buildings, you can see that wood is predominant and it's really well mastered, and so on. Sustainable architecture is not another kind of architecture. It's a good architecture, and it's environmentally responsive architecture. And here you can find the sources that I used for the presentation if you want to get more information about it. Okay guys, so this is the end of this video. I hope it was good for you, and I hope you have learned new things about sustainable architecture that will inspire you for your future works. By the way, if you want to become an architect, I invite you to join the newsletter that I created so that you can read more articles about architecture, and you can also talk with me in private and talk with me about your difficulties so that I can help you. Then you can also join the Facebook group Be an Architect. You can also subscribe to the channel if you want to be the first informed when a new video is coming. So I'm leaving you now, and I see you in the next course. Bye!